Now, our next one is Jennifer Slaney and Jill Smith and Kristen Schaff, who are the going to talk about librarians, because this is funded by the Education Pathways Grant, and so we wanted to make sure that just because in education, like with librarians, you can have out in the public sector as well as in schools, the important positions of the librarians. So if you guys want to take it away, and you can share, Jennifer and Christine and Jill share being librarians.
Well, I'll start it off. I'm Jennifer Slaney. I'm the director of the Sterling Public Library. And I've been there about 25 years. I do have an MLS degree out of school with a master's, but I do know a lot of librarians who do not have anything past a junior college degree or maybe even high school degree to run libraries. Sterling Public has chosen to have a MLS person based on size in the community, and there are libraries just around us, Milledgeville, Tampico, trying to think of some of the smaller towns that Walnut maybe has one, that do not have MLS degrees, and they may have a high school person with a high school degree or just a junior college degree running their libraries. Day-to-day operations change, just like when you were as a teacher, you go in with the classroom, you go in with a plan for the day. And of course, things do fall apart. You're juggling many things. I am in my profession, juggling from maintenance to tech support to helping patrons to dealing with problem patrons and the expectations they want from my library. Of course, I'm also doing bookkeeping, cataloging, purchasing new materials and supplies, and doing readers and grant writing. Yeah, so these are all things that take place. I know different degrees. You can get a 4-year degree and then go in anything you want. And it doesn't matter. I have a bachelor's degree in liberal arts and science, which is something really strange. So I don't have a specific subject matter that I emphasized in. So I'm not a history major or anything like that, but it does help if you want to go into law libraries. There are law libraries. There are special libraries. So when I was in grad school, we toured the Wrigley Library, the chewing gum library. So there is a library at some of these big corporations, and all they do is maintain the advertising pieces. So Wrigley kept all of the outfits from all of their commercials, so that if they wanted to go back and replicate a 1970s outfit, they could for 2000, because they had that outfit in their library. So it's just not books and materials and things like that. There are artifacts that librarians also keep track of. So, you know, history plays a major part in some libraries. Nursing plays another part for hospitals. So we accept all degrees as an undergraduate to become a master's in library science, or if you're just interested in being an associate's degree, library science could be your place to go, or a library could be your place to land. So I'll turn it over to Chris here at the Sterling.
But Jenny and I are happen to be participating in training, because she functions as the head of our local library consortium. How many libraries are now a part?
There are 20 buildings involved in the program.
20 buildings. We just added Amboy with 3 buildings, went down to 2, I believe, and the Center for Change in Rock Falls. And so it makes for a great way for us to share taxpayer resources. One of the biggest requirements for being in a library is the desire to serve. You need to know who your audience, your target audience is. You need to know what their needs are. You need to know the best way to talk to your patrons, clientele, whoever it is that uses your library, and find out what they need. People often have information needs, but have very difficulty communicating that effectively for a search for you to find resources for them. This turns into what they call the reference interview, and developing the skills to talk to somebody on their level and finding out what they're looking for. And sometimes they describe it as a book with blue, and I think there was a section of yellow. And you get to think through your mind, where could that possibly be? And you end up talking about subject matter rather than the color of the cover. I have also had the privilege of working in two different special libraries. I worked for the Daily Illini, and I curated all of the articles written by student writers. And I kept their files, and I created an index that was published. And I also worked for a research and development company that created the little gizmo on your computer where you put your thumb and it reads your thumbprint. And so I had to go find research articles that would support them in their efforts to create, they wanted to make the new Cray. They ended up spinning off most of their developments to other companies. But anyway, it was an interesting place because I never thought that I would be into computer science that much. And I also have a teaching certificate. I am degreed in history and government. So as an educator working in a school, and I work in a single building district. And so I have a very focused patron base of 9 through 12 at Rock Falls. And so talking to the teachers and finding out what the assignments are, what kind of research projects the students are going to be required to complete, the focus of those, that helps me when I see students standing around looking kind of funny, staring at walls, or not even coming in, but just standing in the hallways complaining or discussing these assignments. And so I depend a lot on teachers sharing their assignments with me so that I understand what they're doing. If you had students who are interested in service, I think that would sum up library science in a nutshell. It's all about service. You need to know what the needs of your clientele are. And if you have someone who likes to go above and beyond and help people, library science is an excellent avenue. There are libraries and banks. There's libraries that work for TV production studios, companies that do the research on whatever area a particular movie is going to be addressing, from costumes to the feasibility of whatever the author is trying to, of the script is trying to make possible. And law librarians make over 6 figures. You do not have to pass the bar. You do have to take law classes. So you can get your JD, not pass the bar, be a law librarian, and make 6 figures. So
With no stress.
well, there's plenty of stress. Stress is just a part of our lives, isn't it? It doesn't really matter what you do. But there's just so many, I can't imagine a place. There's art. So people who appreciate, understand art. There's art librarians, there's music librarians. I worked with 2 of those at the university. I also worked in the agricultural library, doing retrospective cataloging. The fields are just, ways you can get into things are so tremendously diverse. As far as the English language, listening, writing, speaking skills, incredibly important, because you cannot communicate effectively with your audience, your patrons as they come to your area, unless you can understand how they're speaking. So if your primary audience does not speak English, you're going to have a difficult time. You're also going to need to communicate very effectively in the written word as you put things out to individuals. You need to be able to write that clearly and effectively. And if you don't listen to people when they try to communicate with you, everyone is going to be very frustrated. So all of those skills are extremely important. And as Jenny said, when you're working in the public sector, you don't always have to have an additional library-specific degree. There is no current degree below a master's. I have a master's in library and information science in addition to my teaching certificate. But there's a number of elementary schools in the area that do not require that. But there are several courses that are offered by the College of DuPage that offer additional training. And these are usually full-time positions, long-term. And I think a lot of our students would be well served if they're interested in working with children. They don't necessarily want to get a teaching certificate. They could end up being a paraprofessional, essentially, in a elementary school serving for their librarian. And yep, and they can also work for particularly large public libraries. We'll often hire LTAs. There's LTA 1, LTA 2, with additional classwork taken for the second level. And again, foreign language skills, always a bonus. What my work day looks like is we get the library up and running, and then we wait to see who walks through the door. Teachers can have special situations that arise, and they'll bring those concerns if they think there's something that I can help with. I have to be familiar with a lot of technology. Educational technology in particular, as well as just some generic troubleshooting for computers, laminators, doing video editing. There's a variety of skills that pretty much a soup to nuts kind of environment. So it's not just sitting there reading a book, waiting for someone to come show you something that they want to check out. So lots of things there, when the day is all done, you look around and you go, wow, where did that time go? Because the day usually flies. I am not required to teach any particular classes. I am on demand. I teach reference skills and research. Also, just pretty much orientation to the library, how to access databases, the best way to search those and create an effective search string. And of course, accessing online cataloging, place holds so that materials from any of these other 20 buildings can show up and be checked out to the student, reminding them to bring materials back. So I work a lot with administration. I write grants. I get materials in. So we've been fortunate to have 3 successful grants, and I've gotten $15,000 in for Rock Falls High School to purchase various specific material books and ebooks. So that's kind of my high school environment. Jill has a different perspective.
Hi, everybody. I am Jill Smith, and I am the district librarian in the Byron School District. I cover 3 buildings, grades pre-K through 12. So unlike Chris, when I'm buying books or things like that, I don't have one target audience. So I have to work with all of them. I kind of stumbled into library in a roundabout way. I went to college, wanted to be a teacher, got talked out of that. And so I got my bachelor's degree in corporate communication. And then worked a little bit and then had my kids and everything. And then I started working at our public library here in Byron. And I was there about 6 years when an opening at the elementary school was available to be a para in the elementary library. So I took that. And after a couple of years, I decided, you know what? I like this. This is what I really want to do. So I went back and I got my master's in instructional technology, my teaching license, and my library certifications all at the same time. I don't recommend that, but that's what I did. And timing wise, it worked out for me that our district librarian was leaving. She was moving. So I interviewed and was able to get the job. So in a roundabout way, that's how I stumbled into this profession. And I would tell you that the one thing that I have found has been the most beneficial education-wise has been my communication degree. Because like Chris said, when you're in this profession, you have to want to serve. You really do. You're there for everybody else. So what they need, what they want, that's definitely your goal, is to make those things happen. So my communication degree, I would tell you, has been wonderful, amazing, and has helped me immensely. I find, I can watch the kids, like Chris said, they stare, they're trying to figure out all those things, and you kind of have to be a communication detective, and you have to ask the right questions. You have to figure out what they need. So that's kind of how I got into this, and what I would tell you has worked positively education wise. As far as my daily job, there is no day that is the same. I, like Chris, am on demand. This year, however, I will be working with our career and college readiness counselor and one of our teachers in an education pathway, and I will be helping to observe students and getting to host some students, high school students, in the library. And they're kind of going to do a training and getting a taste of what the education pathway is like and what it would be like to work in a library. So I will be participating in that this year, but otherwise I'm on demand. With 3 buildings, I have 3 different buildings. So I try to split my time equally. It doesn't work. Our grade school, I have a para in each library, and our grade school services like 700 kids, and I only have 1 para. So I end up being there more. Like Chris said, they'll come in and they'll be like, can I check out that book that Johnny had? And you're like, well, do you know a little more? And it's kind of fun. I would tell you the elementary school library is an adventure. If you love kids, it's a great place to be. The stories, the things they say it's just amazing, and it's very fulfilling. So that's my elementary school. My middle school is about 400 kids, 300 to 400 kids. And it's a little more reserved. The elementary school library is wild. They're coming in, they have class time. At middle school, they don't have a dedicated time for library. We usually correlate and collaborate with the language arts teachers. And they kind of pick a day where they let their kids come in, and they'll be in there 10 to 15 minutes. So there's not a lot of time to teach things in the library at the middle school. I do collaborate with the teachers, and I go into the classroom and I'll teach like how to use our database, how to research, things like that with the kids. And so that tends to work. And then if they're doing a big project, sometimes I'll be available so I can just be in the classroom, be an extra set of hands for the teacher type thing. So, middle school's a little more reserved type thing. Our high school, that's a completely different ballgame. Right now, I'm in the process of trying to re-image, so to speak, our high school library. The way our building is constructed, and over time, the library is kind of in one part of the building, and it's not easily accessible to all kids depending on their schedule. So we're really working to re-image it. And since we've added our career and college readiness counselor, we want the library to really be a center, a hub of sorts where the kids can come and get resources on all things. So we're working to add some more technology into the library and just really establish some different programming and stuff like that. It's been fun doing that. It's busy work, you know, and stuff like that. So that's kind of how each library runs. I also write grants. I've had the pleasure of creating a STEAM lab at my grade school, and most of it was funded through grants. So we've done a lot with that. And most of those companies offer grants as well. So there's a lot of grants out there that you can apply for. And I have written quite a few. Haven't gotten them all, but I've written several, and we've been very lucky. So the STEAM lab is very fun. That is probably what I like about library the most, is that it is ever evolving. It does not stay the same. Libraries today are merging with technology, so you now have to offer a lot of that. And in a school setting, we want to support the curriculum. So we have to get creative sometimes. How can we support that curriculum? Not just with books. Reading's really important, but there are learners who learn a little differently, or reading is not their cup of tea and stuff like that. So we want to have ways to support that curriculum for all kids. The STEAM lab has been really successful, and it's been fun. I've also been able to take some of that STEAM stuff over to our middle school, and I have a couple of teachers who have worked with it, and it's been fun. We've done a science thing, and a 6th grade science, and we've done 7th grade math. So you can incorporate just about anything into any curriculum. You just have to get a little creative. So yes, along with writing grants, overseeing 3 libraries, heading up the programming and what we want to happen. I also do budgeting. So math is a little bit important. It doesn't get too intense, but it is budgeting. So every year I have to submit my budget. This is what I'd like, you know, and I always give reasons why. And I, like for our databases, I kind of give the information like how well the database was used and things like that. So I think that kind of sums it up for the most part.
Are there any questions so far?
Kind of a general question, I suppose, with regard to reluctant readers. It's something we've tried to work on in Morrison High School for sure, by encouraging them to read more magazines, even if it's not a 900-page Harry Potter book. Maybe a magazine would be of interest, and even that has had some trouble gaining traction. Are there some strategies that you might recommend for the high school environment to encourage those kids who might have interest maybe in mechanics or in things that aren't traditionally thought of as library-oriented topics that might be useful to help them read a little bit more?
For the high school level, I find graphic novels are huge, and you can get those. Yeah, you can get a graphic novel version of standard Holocaust titles. Well, Holocaust is heavily reading. We teach a class in Holocaust and Genocide at Rock Falls High School, and they are required by their teacher to do a book report. And the Anne Frank Society, her estate, has put their stamp of approval on the graphic novel version. And there's others. There's Moss 1 and 2. There's also most of the Shakespeare classics also have graphic novel editions. Then there's manga. So I'm not sure if you want to go down that slope, but manga is its own entity, and the kids who end up reading manga are absolutely devoted.
Mhm.
They have a fan base that withstands the test of time. And these kids, which would not be caught dead reading Harry Potter, check out 3 and 4 books. It's like eye candy, but there are words. They do go, it's reverse order. And I've tried reading them. It is so hard because I'm very linear. But these kids argue plot. They argue character development. I have a manga contingent of my library club. And these people, I have to make sure it does not rise to the level of fisticuffs. Because if an English teacher could only see how well these kids understand the motivation, theme, and the protagonist and who's, oh my goodness, and they go back and forth. They have very strong opinions. So if we could ever get them to come from that and transition into, and that's where I think the graphic novels, so we could take our manga readers, transition them to graphic novels, and then talk about standard character theme, plot, device, all of those. That would be a suggestion. And I have a strong manga collection. Sterling Public has manga. Dixon has manga. And these are all available for interlibrary loan. So if you can get a kid kind of involved in that, and our graphic novel collections are also fairly robust, we're very willing to lend.
Thank you, that's helpful.
I would add just to what Chris said, the graphic novels are totally for high school, and the manga. What I found is that by the time they get to high school, they have so much other reading they have to do that reading for pleasure concept kind of takes a back seat, and they can commit to some things, but not big, long books usually. So the graphic novels are quicker to read, things like that. And they also, like, for those kids who don't want to read Harry Potter or Percy Jackson, like Chris said, you can get a graphic novel format in almost anything now. Percy Jackson's out there. So some of those bigger fiction titles, you can find the graphic novel versions as well.
Yeah.
We've got a couple questions in the chat. One said, talked about the STEAM lab. And then another question is, what kind of budget training did you receive, or do you wish you had received before starting your job? So I'll throw that out, those two questions out.
Yeah, you want to take the STEAM lab? Because I don't have one of those.
Yes, I can take the STEAM lab. So we started, just a quick synopsis. I started because we have 30 minutes of dedicated library time in our elementary school. It takes elementary kids, a class of 24, all of about 7 minutes to find a new book each week, because they don't really know how to look for them. They walk to the shelves and, oh, this one's blue, I like that, or it has a dog on it, I'll read that. So they're done checking out pretty quickly. I lost a para in that library. I used to have 2. And so what I did was I shifted kind of responsibilities and things like that, and started teaming with the teachers to go in and teach the resources and how to do things in the library. But then in library, because we have about 18 minutes, we do an activity. So we have correlated that activity sometimes with the curriculum or whatever, but I started bringing in just simple STEAM activities, things that we didn't have to spend a lot of money on, small things, for different age groups. And the kids really loved it. So it seemed to take off. And then I just started kind of applying for grants. And then I begged and pleaded for 2 years to let me have the computer lab next to the library. And I did get it. And we began this kind of construction of our STEAM lab. So we have a functioning STEAM lab. I had one 3D printer. I did get 2 more this last year. I have 3D printers. I have robots. I have Dot and Dash Wonder, Cublets, We have iPads. We have a lot of variety. Legos. We built a Lego wall in the STEAM lab. The kids love it. With COVID, we couldn't work in the STEAM lab because of all the manipulatives. So this year, depending on how it goes, we're hoping we'll be able to get some of our kids, 4th and 5th grade, in for an extended tech time, which would be in the STEAM lab working on a project. So I work with our technology teacher, and we've come up with some different projects. I use Bloxels, and I have 5th graders that do a presidential project in January and February. Well, in the fall, I teach them how to research, and we research a president, and then they use Bloxels and they create a video game that reflects their president. So it's really kind of neat, and the kids have a great time. And it's simple. It's not as hard as it sounds.
All right. Is your STEAM lab, Jill, replicated at middle school or high school level?
Not yet. The goal is to put a STEAM lab in each building. Elementary was kind of our trial. And so we're just kind of pushing. I have our admin. I've worked a lot with the admin just because of this, and our financial guy who really support it. And so our financial guy has been great because he's like, hey, there's a grant. You want to apply for it, and he loves it. So we just keep pushing, and now we've got the interest peaked, and now we'll continue towards middle school and high school.
Terrific. Well, I saw there was the next chat question, Gail, I believe was on budgeting.
Yes.
All right. Well, I did take a class on grant writing at the graduate level, and there's some standard ways you can go around to discover those grants. But Rails, which is our regional library system, also offers grant writing classes and helps people do that. And certainly, though, they're very willing to read over like a first draft and make suggestions. An awful lot of it, quite honestly, has been trial and error. At least it has been for me. And I think that's another instance where your writing skills, communication, Jill, yep, comes right to the forefront. And if you can cogently, coherently tie together the needs and provide good evidence, there's your math skills for statistics of what your base is, what their needs are, how you're lacking, how this grant could ameliorate that. Those are all critical skills to getting a successful grant.
I would add to the budgeting. I did not get any budgeting. I mean, I've taken a grant writing course like Chris and stuff like that on my own and everything. But as far as when I moved into this position, I did not get any information on budgeting. Each year I have found out a little more about how our budgeting process at our school works. And that's where that communication is. You really kind of have to be aware of like what's missing from your knowledge base and wanting more knowledge. So you've got to go in, you've got to ask those questions and things like that. So, and make the connections with those people in like your district office or the offices so that you know how they want it done and the whys, because the better you are at it, the easier it is for them to review your budget and things like that.
So again, the grant writing process also, the communication between you and your teachers is just so critical, just so critical. The school librarian really needs to be in constant contact so that you understand the needs that your teachers have that may not be being fulfilled at the current time, so that you can tie that in to when you do your grant writing. Because if you can say, I have personally communicated with and had 6 meetings with the following numbers of teachers, and all of them have expressed an interest, that kind of structure goes a long way to making successful grants. And for the public library,
Well, I never had any budget training. It was just thrown in, but public libraries, their money is raised through taxes. So as the property values change, so does our budget change. But, it's just a matter of, we have our usual things, just like your home has, except we have personnel and health insurance and all of those things. And some things don't change. Majority of my budget is personnel issues. So, and the rest that's left over is divided as much as possible between all the other things that I need to buy, from maintaining the building supplies to purchasing of materials. So yes, you learn how to do one. It's based on a percentage of certain things that have to be covered, and grants play a part, but it's not the whole thing. But taxes for a public library is how we raise a majority of our funds. 90% of our funds come through the taxpayers, for at least for my public library. So that's important. So I did not take any budget classes in school. So it was a trial and error, and, having a forgiving board. I'm overseen by a board of either appointed or elected officials, depending on the size of the library. So where school librarians usually have one person that oversees them and reviews them, a public library usually has an appointed board or an elected board, and they are the ones that can make or break you at any meeting and say you're fired. It's a lot of forgiveness for the board, but it's also understanding from the board. So if you sit on a board, you're not compensated for it in the public library setting, and it's appreciated that you at least attend the meetings. But as a librarian, I'm overseen by 9 people. And so any given day they can pick up the phone and reprimand me. And so it's hard. So you've got to be willing to have a thick skin, because the public will also
They also weigh in.
they also weigh in, and the board also weighs in. And in a public library setting, the mayor also can weigh in as well. So, and patrons can be very bad at that too. So, whatever library you get into, you have to have somewhat of a thick skin to take the criticism and the yelling. Public library setting, patrons are so different than the school librarians environment. You do know somewhat what your patrons are going to do when they walk in the door. Any given time, we've had, alcoholics come in, we've had, drug addicts come in, people with psychological problems that walk in. All of this you do not know, and that what makes homeless. Yeah, everything is a different day in a public library setting. So we allow everybody in. We are encouraged to do that, even down to people who are registered on the sexual offenders list, which really surprises a lot of people. Yes, we have to allow them in, because they could be looking for a job, but also we don't verify to make sure who's a sexual offender. So, so these are all things that we deal with in the public library setting. So thick skins, willing to have a good outlook on working in the public environment. And, high school education is okay, and an MLS degree is also okay. And you don't have to necessarily, in some libraries, have to have an MLS degree, even in a big town. Just to have a law degree works for some libraries. It just depends on what they're looking for and how you come across in an interview. So, if you've got students you think would be great, obviously getting in the door sometimes helps, especially in a public library. Just getting in the door. Some public libraries will pay for training for an LTA, and as you move on, you're up the pay scale. Some libraries will reimburse you for your hours of education. So, if somebody wants to become a librarian, there's places that will hire you and help you train to become one as an MLS as well. So,
yeah,
encourage students to go that way.
There is a well-established path for teachers to become librarians as well. It takes 18 hours of additional classes, and then you'll get an additional endorsement on your license. So just in case anybody out there is interested, just a little plug, come talk to me. The water's warm, it's good.
Give a plug for those that might have students that are looking at the education career pathway, and if they wanted to look at being a librarian.
You're
Cool.
going to get a teaching license as we discussed. And then some of the bennies, I don't write tests. I don't grade quizzes or research papers. I teach people how to cite, but I don't grade those. Also having a good understanding of what it takes to be a successful reader. Like the gentleman was asking about how to help those struggling high school readers, because they've already got a fair amount of history with bad experiences. I didn't like this book. I don't like being tested on this. I don't want that. They could also have some fluency issues, and having an audiobook is another way to pair the audio with the book. They can be listening to it. It helps them move along with their sight lines. If they're struggling with, because when you read, you sort of pronounce it in your head. And if you are not fluent, then having the audiobook will help you move along. So for struggling English learners, having audiobooks is a big help. There's also in Sora is one vendor I know of that has dyslexia fonts that you can view a book on digitally. And you can also change the level of discrepancy between the white and the black. You can reverse the print, and so that the white space isn't so overwhelming to the eyes. So there's visual issues. So for students that have bad attitudes toward reading, the problem may be more deep. And it would take a little more investigation and find out what their actual problem is with reading and what they have an issue with. My husband is a PhD. He has multiple issues with reading. And some of it is a scotopic sensitivity. And so he has a filter we discovered and put that on. And by reducing the amount of contrast between white and black with the overlay of color, it allows him to read, and he reads voraciously with those filters and a ruler.
Well, thank you. Thank you so much for sharing being a librarian with everyone. We really appreciate your sharing the pathway it's another pathway in education. So thank you very much.
Hey, Gail.
Yes.
Can I add one statement? You talked about if you have kids who maybe want to go into this field.
Yeah.
I think the biggest thing is to remind them it's not just checking out books. We deal with web design, we deal with technology, so much is there that will pique interest in a lot of kids. So asking or telling them to explore the field is a good way.
Thank you. Thank you very much. If everybody in the class, if you could put something in the chat so that I will have that to send along with the thank yous. They have been very appreciative of that. And one of the things that I didn't send out last week, the connections and the PowerPoints, because I didn't get the links to those, and I will be sending those out as soon as I receive them. I received the emails back from some of the participants that said that I'm on vacation, I'll do it when I get back, and totally understandable. So I will put that together with this, with today's links of contact information. But if you could put, and I'll send that out later, as well as a survey that I would, like I do every year, what I would like to, what I will be asking on the survey, if you would respond to it, is what would you like to, if you participated next summer, what would you like to see? And any suggestions. So I will be sending that survey out. But if you put your comments in the chat room, they are very, very appreciative of of your comments. And since they've taken their time on sharing with us. So thank you all so much for participating, and don't forget to get your write-up to Janice and any paperwork so that you will be get the stipend. And don't forget to sign in. Thank you very much for participating this summer. We really appreciate it.